Welcome to my little color tutorial today. Intro to color, intro to my palette. So there is a video already where I talk about what color specifically I have laid down here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the principles that I use for color mixing. And yeah, so let's get right into it. And there'll be quite a few videos on color mixing because I can talk just for ages. So this is just going to be the kind of starter one, right? So, color wheel. There's probably someone listening to this just groans like, "Oh, not the color wheel." But indeed, yes, the color wheel. Okay. So this might be, you know, rehashing what you guys already know, but bear with me because this is all where it starts. So we have three primary colors, of course. Don't worry, I'm going to speed up real quick, right? Yellow, red, and blue. Okay. The reason I mention this specifically is because I am using essentially a split primary palette. I have burnt sienna over here, but this was just for an underpainting. I don't usually use burnt sienna. These are just leftover mixtures. So it all kind of stems from this initial principle where we have red, right? Blue, ultramarine blue over here, and then yellow. I'll say cad yellow over here. And I used to lay them out like this, with the blue on this side of the palette and the yellow over here and the red out there, but my sleeve gets into it and it's sort of hard to manage. Now, essentially my palette is the color wheel just moved up. So this gets bent up into a line, right? And you see that we go from the blues and in order, right? Cool, warmer blue, cool red, warming up to cad red, warming again, cad orange, yellow, cooling off to lemon yellow, yellow ochre, and then my bonus color green gold, right? And back to blue. So we see this actually is the color wheel. That is the way I've laid out my palette. There are many different ways to lay out your palette, but mine is laid out in the direction of the color wheel. Some people separate cools and warms on like opposite sides of the palette. Some people put like the dirt colors together. This is how I lay mine out. There is no black here. Though I can paint with black, I consider it a cool blue. And there are no grays. Some people neutralize colors by using Payne's gray or other versions of gray. I neutralize by mixing complementary colors. Okay, so I guess some basic principles here. Um, let's take this green off for a second because I don't usually normally have the green on. There's obviously no real green on my palette. Let's take this off too. I'm cheating a little bit. I have all these cheat colors on. You caught me on my cheat colors. But normally my palette is just this, right? So if I want to make green, then I'm mixing my ultramarine blue and I'm mixing a yellow, right? We get that. And similarly, of course, if I want to mix a purple, ultramarine blue, and cad red. That's looking a little bit reddish purple. This will be a very dull purple because cad red is not very bright. But we have a purple here. All right, and then we have cad red and cad orange to mix, or sorry, cad yellow, excuse me, to mix an orange. Okay. So whatever palette you're using, it's really important that you know the range of the palette. And the palette is actually extremely predictable because you're going to know what the maximum kind of chroma that you can achieve between different colors. So the more space there is between these colors, and I guess this is coming down to that like original color theory, right? The more space there is between these colors, the lower the saturation is going to be. So what happens is, so actually before I move my iPad over here, before I do that, you can see here that I have to note that I have an orange, right, with this palette, but it's pretty desaturated orange, it might be like a terracotta pot. It's a pretty desaturated orange, whereas look here versus an actual orange from the tube is cad orange. You can see it's quite a bit more saturated, right? And similarly, I don't have any purples directly from the tube, but if I were to go to my alizarin crimson, which is much cooler and much closer, you can see on the line, right, to my ultramarine blue, I have a much more vibrant purple. So understanding this principle, I suppose, let's talk about why we're going to introduce the secondary colors, right? So we'll go over here. So pull the iPad. Hold on. Hope my battery does not die. Okay. So here we have the three primaries as well. If you mix between them, the mix is usually somewhere along this line, right? So between the purple and the red that I see here, I'm going to get kind of like we already said, a desaturated-ish purple somewhere right there, right? Now the line that goes to this between each other, I'm drawing them straight. They do actually bend a little bit, um, meaning that it might kind of go like this, as in like it might lean red, 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 and then kind of end up desaturated yellow. But anyways, just to simplify, and then we'll say green, right? Okay. But these are all going to be less saturated than a green directly from the tube or an orange directly from the tube, right? That can be beneficial because if this is cad orange, or sorry, cad yellow, which is a warmer yellow, and mixed with ultramarine blue, you're going to get kind of a desaturated-ish, it's not completely desaturated, but a lower saturation green, which could be perfect for painting olives or for painting like a warmer green that's in like a darker undertone of a plant. So that's a great green to have. But if you need a green with more power, right? What you need to do is you need to stretch out essentially your triangle closer to the outside of the circle. So I'll show you what I mean. So what essentially is happening is that around this, maybe I should go this gray. There is like a circle. All right, that does not change. Let's change the ellipse. There you go. It's like this. There's like a little circle, right? That goes around all these colors. And when we only have three colors, we are limited to. It's like when you cut a corner, right? Like imagine this, like there's a corner over here and you cut it. That's essentially what we're doing. We're cutting a corner. The corner that's missing is violet. So we're only going to be able to get the corner cutting of violet, essentially. Yeah. Does that make sense? Maybe. So if I want to have a more vibrant green, I have a couple ways of doing that, right? And we see here, sorry, let me just pull this back for a second. We see here this green, right? Like, it's a nice green, but it's not the most vibrant green. And the more cad yellow I add to it, the duller it's going to get. And the reason for that is because cad yellow is both an opaque color, which means it tends to have a more chalkier feel to it, and it's a warm yellow, meaning it's pulling it around yellow, almost into the oranges, which therefore is having a little bit of a desaturation effect on the green. Okay. It's going to increase my brightness here a little bit. Yep. So if I want to have more greens, I have a couple ways to do that. I can introduce a green into my color wheel, right? Now imagine you're mixing these two together. Now you can think that you're probably going to have, this and so on, right? Get slightly bluer. You're going to have this range. So you see like that? See how that stretches out? You're still kind of missing in here. This is the little slice now that you're missing of color. But you move the triangle, you essentially, what you end up doing is this. You take this line here. Oh, I can't move that one. Oh, right here. Hold on. And you bend it out. That's what's happening. When you put the green here, you bend this into a bigger range of value. The other way of doing this is you introduce a cooler yellow. Maybe right here, right? In fact, it's probably a little bit farther over. Maybe it's like right here. A little lemon yellow. Now you've got here to here. See how that stretches? So now you end up stretching your amount of your greens there, right? So now you can think, okay, if I have the lemon yellow, maybe I'm going to get this range, right? And so on. So you see, we introduce those greens. So similarly, if you want to have orange, a brighter orange anyways, it's not that you need to have these, because you could paint with a very desaturated palette Like maybe you're painting outside. You know, you're not going to have probably like bright orange or, you know, unless you're painting flowers, I guess, right? But you're probably not going to have a lot of these colors. So you can see now how you might choose a different palette just to make things easier, right? If all the colors came out more desaturated because there was less bending towards the outer circles, that could be a perfect plein air palette. Again, so when you go here, now we have all the range between orange and red, and maybe I'll just make that actually a little bit more orangey, like this, and then all the range between orange and yellow. And maybe something here, probably more saturated actually, like that. And red. Just kind of imagining what those would look like. Yeah, so we're stretching out the circle. Yeah. And again, obviously, if you added violet, won't do the whole thing. You get the idea. You're going to be able to pull your value mixes over and out. Similarly, if you didn't choose Cad Red, maybe you chose Burnt Sienna, right? You're going to end up down. So closer to the outer circle is more saturated. Closer you're in, desaturated. So you move it in, and you can see, you can imagine if you're mixing these two colors together, right, that you're going to have even less saturated. Trying to cheat here, but you're going to have less saturated purples even more. So as you go together. Okay, so that's sort of color theory, or that's how I think about it in my head. And then if I want to, I guess, neutralize a color, right? Let's go back to my palette. Okay. So if I'm painting and I want to have the most vibrant color, I'm going to have to add a color right out of the tube. For your lighter mixtures like yellows, oranges, and reds, that can be simply as is, or oh, my white is dirty here, but just pretend the white is clean. I'm trying to grab a little clean part. Add a bit of white. Usually, the white is going to knock down the chroma of the color a little bit, but because the lemon yellow is semi-transparent, it holds color better. So semi-transparent colors, like the yellow, like the not quinacridone rose, but opera rose I'm using now, alizarin crimson or magenta, this is magenta, ultramarine blue, Caribbean turquoise, or Caribbean, I say that weird, right? All of those are semi-transparent. They will usually hold their pigment a lot better with white, but things like cad yellow, cad orange, cad red, they're really going to lose some of that chroma, especially cad red. You know, if you're trying to paint flowers with cad red and, you know, like some pink, beautiful roses, like I'm sure there is some cad red in there, but you can see that it really dulls it down. Like that's like a very dull pink. So the only way to paint roses with this cad red is if you made everything else, like you lower the relationship value of everything else to it. Okay, let me just show you versed here. Magenta. So if I add white to my magenta, you can see that it really maintains its chroma a lot more. Not sure this is the color of a rose either. That's usually why quinacridone rose or opera rose. You know, you might want to introduce that to have that real vibrant pink. Okay. Also, so your cools, usually, you know, you can't obviously read the chroma of something that is essentially a black. That's pretty much black, right? So it's like turning a light switch on, you add some white to it, and you get a lot of chroma. So if I'm trying to paint like a terracotta pot, let's go with that, right? So a terracotta pot, you know, I'm just gonna grab this is not exactly terracotta, don't want to get mad at me. But you know, this is kind of it's like a you know, we're always thinking of color in three terms. And I'll have a video, if I haven't posted before this one, a slide deck that kind of explains some of this theory, right? But color is always seen in value, hue, and saturation. So what is the value? Depends on what side. I mean, I'm looking at the dark side, right? You're looking at the light side. Maybe like a 3, right? Value 3. Hue seems, you know, has to be one of these, by the way. So pink is not a hue. So you can say that if you want. No one's gonna get mad at you. You know, is it orange? Is it yellow orange? You know, I'm thinking it's probably red orange and that it's pink because it's getting a cool light on it right now, which is going to take a default orange down to more of a reddish orange, and it's very desaturated, very, very desaturated. So knowing that, I have two ways to get to this color, right? I can start with orange, like this, and I can start to desaturate it. How do I desaturate orange? I add the opposite value in the color wheel, blue, right? I have two different blues here. I have this ultramarine blue. Let's start with that. And I'm not going to see anything until we add some white to this as well. So I can take this down into a blue range. I'm not painting the terracotta pot. I'm just saying, how would I desaturate this color? Maybe I need to knock it down even more. This is where it's sort of bending because the blue is not, it's not actually completely opposite of my orange. It's a little bit to the left. So you see it's actually brought the orange into a purple. It's like a little bit pinkish purple, you know? Let's show here, right? Let's see here. So let's say maybe that's exactly the color I needed. I wanted to lean purple, but maybe I actually wanted to lean a bit more yellow. Well, or I want to knock some of the purple out. I can just add some of my CAD yellow into here, pull it, you know. So let me just get my color wheel up here. So we're here, right? Everything's got low battery today. I'm hanging it over here. I need to pull it back around the wheel towards yellow. Add some yellow in there. So you're always kind of looking at this and you're saying, you know, I kind of got this in my head, but I don't know which side I'm painting anymore, you know. That's like sort of, you see that's almost like kind of maybe a transition color right now, right? And I'm got like a warm light on the left there. You know, you're always kind of saying, does it need to be, is it the right hue? Is it more yellow? Is it more orange? Is it more blue? The saturation, is it too bright? Does it feel too chromatic? If it feels too chromatic, you need to knock some of it out with a complementary color. Complementary color, something either across with the color wheel or a farther distance on it from the color wheel. And what is the value? This here is definitely too dark to be the light side. So we add some white into it and we just keep playing this game, you know? And we bring it up now into a better value range, right? And again, maybe it's too purple and it needs to be even cooler and yellower. So I go for my lemon yellow, knock a bunch of lemon yellow into it to bring it into more of a yellow range. Because I'm kind of like now just inadvertently looking over here at this and you can see that I'm bringing it into my yellow range, you know? And now I've mixed that kind of inadvertently. So that's an example, I guess, of how I'm mixing that pot. Okay. So the other way to start this is I might say, you know, my pot is, like I said, we said it was like an orangish red, right? We knocked down the orange by adding the blue. I could also say, I'm going to make an orange that's desaturated enough from things that are farther. So rather than starting with orange, I start with the colors that make up orange. Like I could go with yellow, lemon yellow. And let's go with Opera Rose and just see what these end up with, right? Now these are both semi-transparent, so I have a pretty bright orange here. And then I say, okay, let's add some white to it because it's like kind of like adjusting what makes the most sense. You know, you can sit here and play around forever with the chroma of it, but probably you want to you kind of got to move it with what you see, right? So now, you know, I have a very light yellow orange. Maybe now I want to just knock some more chroma out of it. So again, I'm moving around the color wheel to go with the farther away yellow, and I'll go with the farther away pink because this is yellow and purple down here, and they're so far away from the color wheel, even though they're not like literally opposites, they're going to end up knocking the chroma down, right? And you see that each of the colors has a value. This is like a value 9, so that lower lower the value, and you know, yellow ochre, like of what a value is it 3 or 4, drop this down in value as well. And okay, if I want that to be more yellow again, and you can see I can just kind of keep growing like, okay, let me reach again for my ultramarine blue. I'm kind of just starting here and then I'm getting colors that are farther and farther apart on the color wheel to show like another way of getting into that terracotta pot color essentially that we want. Let's stop there and put this next to here. So you can see there's two different versions of it. Here we see this is still, it's yellower, right? If I want to make this more like this color, It's yellow. I need it to not be yellow. What do I need to do? I need to add some purple. Okay, still kind of yellow. Still a bit maybe orange. Add some green. I'm going to cool that down with green. And what is that green going to do to the value? It's going to drop it, right? Because the green itself is probably like a value 5 right there, actually. Hard to tell. It's pretty chromatic. Okay, so now this is lighter than this, and this is a little bit maybe bluer. So maybe I add a smidge of ultramarine blue. Okay, very close. I'm squinting at them together. Again, the one on the right is bluer, and it's also a bit darker. Oops, I got that snuck into it. If I add some more of my blue, it's going to darken it slightly and push it to the right. And those are very, very similar now. And very addictive here. Smidge more blue. Again, I'm kind of cooling it down, desaturating it. Right? And now we have two colors almost identical. But this one was made from cad orange and ultramarine blue. And this one was made from like just using colors farther and farther away on the color wheel. Okay, so normally I would probably go, actually, you know what? I would do both strategies. So, all right, let me leave that there and I will do another color mixing. I'll just do a couple of these. Sometimes I just feel like there's so much to say and I'm sorry, I can kind of travel a bit. I'm like, okay, we're into this, but we also need to discuss hue, value, chroma. So I'll just do another video right now that's just for, yeah, hue, value, chroma, and how do we mix something just with those in terms of that sense.